Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight, we're diving into a pretty unsettling topic from Chinese folklore, something known as taanguay. The name translates to replacement ghost, and it refers to a chilling belief that a spirit can latch onto a living person, not randomly, but as a replacement, sometimes with the help of someone still alive. Now, some of you may have come across this topic before, but chances are most of you haven't. So after tonight's story, I'll be taking some time to break down what this practice is and how it ties into real cultural beliefs across Asia. Tonight's story takes us back to Hong Kong, where a young woman named Jen had a terrifying experience she's never been able to forget. At the time, Jen was in her early 20s and only a few years into her career. One evening after work, Jen went over to visit her childhood friend, Linda, to have dinner with her and Linda's parents. Linda lived with her parents in one of those familiar public housing estates, the kind stacked on top of each other with long corridors, cement walls, and flickering hallway lights that always seemed a little too dim. They were on the 9th floor. Jen remembers that clearly. The elevator doors had opened onto the floor that looked just like every other floor in the building. Same walls, same floors, and the same greenish tint from the overhead fluorescent bulbs on every floor. Linda's unit was a very typical Hong Kong apartment, the kind you'd find in just about every government block back then. It was small, but practical. An outer metal gate in front of the wooden front door. Inside the apartment was pretty narrow, with just enough space for a small living room, a dining table pressed up against the wall, and 2 bedrooms squeezed in the back. The floors were tiled in that beige speckled pattern you see everywhere in the 90s. The walls were slightly yellowed from the years of cooking, and a ceiling fan hummed softly overhead. Jen remembered the smell too, a mix of mothballs and cooking oil. Jen had known Linda for most of her life. They'd grown up together and were classmates since primary school. Back then, they were inseparable. But even as kids, they had their differences between them. Jen was always focused and always the top of her class. Linda was the opposite. Friendly, but never really into school. Her grades hovered near the bottom, and she didn't really seem to care. Over the years, their paths split more and more. Jen funded herself through school with scholarships, eventually becoming an ophthalmologist. Linda never made it into college. These days, she worked part-time at the bubble tea shop just downstairs. Still, they remained close. There was comfort in that kind of long friendship. Jen had been to Linda's apartment more times than she could count. It never changed. The same flickering fluorescent lights, the same cluttered living room. Linda's family had always struggled financially. Her mom, a sharp-tongued woman with a habit of speaking too loudly, was the kind of person who bragged about the smallest things. But Jen had always sensed something else behind her smile, a subtle tension, like deep down, the woman resented how well Jen had turned out, how successful she became, while her own daughter was on a different path in life. Jen never said anything. She was always polite, respectful. But deep down, she always wondered and felt this way through things that Linda's mom would say. Whenever Jen mentioned anything good happening in her life, Linda's mom would always try to downplay it with little subtle remarks. For example, at the time, Jen had recently purchased a brand new apartment. Instead of praise and everyone being happy for her, Linda's mom mentioned, "Oh, that area? It's not the best area." It was always similar comments like this whenever she shared anything positive in her life. So eventually, Jen just kept it all to herself and didn't share anything else with them. On this particular day, Jen arrived a little earlier than expected. She slipped off her shoes by the front door and stepped inside, greeted by the familiar clatter of cooking from the kitchen and the low hum of the television in the living room. Despite how Linda's mom was, she was always welcoming when Jen came around. Jen called them uncle and auntie. That's how she always called them. It was just polite. And even though Jen was a grown woman now, the honorifics stuck. Linda's dad gave Jen the usual nod of acknowledgement as he sat at the small dining table, flipping through the day's copy of the Chinese newspaper with his reading glasses low on his nose. In the kitchen, Linda's mom moved around as she was finishing up making the meal for everyone. The smell of stir-fried vegetables and salted fish drifted through the apartment. Jen and Linda sat on the old living room couch. It was one of those bulky fabric sofas with floral print, slightly sunken in the middle from years of use. They chatted about work for a bit and were just catching up. After dinner and hanging out for a bit longer, it was close to 9 p.m. when Jen began to get ready to leave. She stood up, slowly starting to gather her belongings, and thanked Linda's mom for the delicious meal. Linda was still lounging on the couch as she was saying goodbye to Jen. The evening had been perfectly ordinary. Jen turned toward the door, but something made her glance at the living room window. That's when it happened. There was a large window just behind the couch, facing out into the open air between buildings. And as Jen turned, made goodbye, something caught her eye. A movement. Just outside the large window. It was a figure. It floated by fairly quickly, gliding from left to right across the glass. Jen's breath caught in her throat. Because the face on this figure was hers. It was her face, but pale and expressionless. Looking straight at Jen. It drifted just inches from the glass. Jen froze. She didn't scream or move. For a second, her mind tried to convince her that she had imagined it. Maybe it was a reflection from the TV or something. But deep down, she knew what she saw. They were on the 9th floor. There was no balcony, no place for anyone to be standing outside. Everyone in the apartment saw her freeze. Linda stopped mid-sentence. They all turned to look at the window too, to see what Jen was so focused on looking at. But by then, the figure was gone. There was nothing outside now, just the glow of the other housing blocks. Jen stood there stiffly, her face pale, and then she told him what she saw. The room fell silent. Linda looked confused. Her dad scoffed gently. He didn't believe in this stuff, but her mom didn't laugh. She really believed in the supernatural. Instead, she gave Jen a very serious look. "Come with me tomorrow," she said. "I'll take you to see someone." The next day, Jen kept her promise. She met Linda's mom outside of the Sekime MTR station, and together, they walked to a nearby housing block. It wasn't a temple or a shop. It was an apartment. Just another old apartment in a quiet public estate. But this was where a Taoist priest lived, someone that Linda's mom had been to before. Once they reached the 7th floor, Linda's mom rang the bell. A moment later, it opened. Inside was dim and cluttered. Right by the door there was a wooden altar with a Gunyam statue. The living room was filled with odd statues and stacks of ritual items, old bells, carved wood, dusty scrolls, things that Jen has never seen before. It didn't feel like a normal home, more like a hoarder's home, packed into a tiny apartment. She was guided to a chair in front of a heavy wooden desk in the middle of the room. The priest sat on the opposite side of the desk in front of her. He looked to be a regular middle-aged man, probably in his 50s, wearing a plain white polo and black slacks. Linda's mom explained everything. The priest nodded slowly, then asked Jen for her season batzi. This translates to the date and time of your birth. He scribbled some notes on a yellow piece of paper, lit a stick of incense, and began chanting in a low voice. He moved through a series of small rituals and burned the talisman. After some time, he stopped. "All is fine now," he said simply. He didn't tell her a price directly, but he did slide an empty red envelope across the table, suggesting that she could donate whatever she felt like was fair. Jen slipped a small amount of cash into it, bowing slightly as she handed it back. It didn't take long, but she thought that was the end of it. A few days passed without incident, until one night, not long after, she met up with Linda again for a late-night dinner. It was already past 10 by the time they finished eating, and since Jen's new apartment was a bit further away, she decided to just stay over at Linda's place for the night, as she had to be back again the next morning to meet up with another friend for dim sum. The walk back to the apartment block was quiet, just the two of them strolling back casually as they continued to talk. About halfway through the walk, Jen felt something strange. Her shirt felt like it was being tugged on. At first, she thought it was just the wind, or maybe her handbag caught the shirt in a weird way. But it wasn't that. It was a distinct downward pull, like someone had taken a hold of the fabric from behind and was gently but persistently pulling down. She even felt the pressure of the shirt on both her shoulders. She reached back, adjusting it. Nothing there. It stayed with her the entire walk, until they reached Linda's apartment. Back in Linda's apartment, everything felt normal again. That strange tugging on her shirt seemed to have stopped the moment she stepped inside. Jen put her bag down on the couch before heading into the bathroom for a quick shower. Linda's parents were asleep already. She closed the door behind her as she hopped in the shower. As the water was running down her face, something shifted. Jen didn't notice it at first. It was more like a sudden change in her mood, a sudden weight pressing down on her chest. Thoughts began to form in her mind. Thoughts that weren't hers. Dark thoughts of not wanting to be in this world anymore. Jen's eyes wandered. On the soap rack was a pair of scissors, the kind used for trimming hair. She didn't think, she just reached for them. She opened the blades slowly, then gripped them with her right hand tightly. Blood welled up almost instantly in her palm. It mixed with the running water. For some reason, it didn't hurt at all. It was almost as if Jen was in a dream. She stood there in the warm running water, gripping the pair of scissors tighter, as if her body was being guided by something else. Jen wasn't someone who struggled with depression. In fact, she couldn't have been happier with where she is in life right now. She loved her job as an ophthalmologist. Her parents were healthy. And she just bought her own apartment in Hong Kong. A pretty impressive accomplishment. Nothing felt wrong at all. Until now. As Jen was gripping onto the scissors, she tried to fight these dark, intrusive thoughts until something inside her snapped awake. She pulled herself back out of this strange trance and dropped the scissors onto the shower floor with a metallic clatter. Her hands were shaking. Blood ran down the drain with the running water. She shut off the water, quickly got dressed, and stumbled out of the bathroom. Linda saw her immediately. Her eyes went wide. "What happened? Did you accidentally cut yourself on something?" Jen could barely speak. Her voice trembled as she told Linda everything, the strange thoughts and the scissors. Linda looked concerned for her friend. She ran over to the drawer and grabbed the first aid kit, and gently wrapped Jen's hand in gauze, cleaning the cut in silence. That night, neither of them slept well. Jen laid out a thin mattress on the floor beside Linda's bed. The apartment was small, so space was tight, but that wasn't what kept her awake. Something about the air felt heavy and off. At some point, exhaustion finally pulled her under, but even her dreams were really weird. In her dream, Jen was at work. She was standing in the dim glow of the exam room, adjusting the lens machine in front of a female patient. It was just another routine checkup, at first. The woman looked unfamiliar, middle-aged, neatly dressed, but there was something strange about her face. The way she smiled at Jen without blinking, a stiff, unnatural smile. Jen asked her to read the letters back to her on the vision chart, but the woman didn't speak. She just sat straight up in her chair, smiling, staring at Jen. Jen's skin prickled. She didn't know this person, she was sure of that, but the way the woman stared at her made her stomach twist. And then, the woman started to laugh. It was low at first, but as she continued laughing, it became louder and louder. It seemed like the laugh wasn't just coming out of this woman's mouth anymore. It was coming from all around Jen, as if it was being projected into her head. As she laughed, her face began to change. Bit by bit, feature by feature. Her chin, her mouth, her eyes, until Jen was no longer looking at a stranger. She was staring at herself, her own face sitting across from her, smiling and laughing. Jen jolted awake, heart pounding, drenched in cold sweat. She laid on the floor in the darkness of Linda's room, listening to the quiet hum of the ceiling fan, her breath uneven. The dream was so vivid. She'd never experienced a nightmare like this before in her life. The next morning, things felt normal again. The strange heaviness was gone, and her thoughts were clear again. But now, her hand throbbed. She said goodbye to Linda and left the apartment, heading to meet another friend for dim sum. It was a casual meetup, already planned earlier in the week, with a friend she hadn't seen in weeks. They were sitting at a small table in a crowded restaurant, sipping tea and picking at hagao, when Jen finally told her friend everything, from the floating face, the Taoist priest, the scissors, and even the nightmares last night. Her friend put her chopsticks down and looked up at her, concerned. "Jen, that's not normal. I think you might have bumped into some wuzhouye. This translates to unclean things, which is another way we say ghosts. I think I know someone you should see," she said. Jen had nowhere else to be that day, so she agreed. And by now, she was sure something was happening to her. After dim sum, they headed to Gaolongtong. It wasn't a shop or a clinic. Again, it was just another ordinary apartment, tucked inside one of those quiet, aging towers. The woman that they were going to visit wasn't a proper Taoist priest or spirit medium. She was just an older Chinese lady, but a lot of locals swore by her. They said she could see things that most people couldn't, and as soon as Jen stepped inside, something felt wrong. The moment she stepped into the apartment, a wave of dizziness hit her. The lights seemed dimmer, the air heavier. It felt like walking into a dream. Everything was hazy and muffled, like she was drifting further from her own body. The old woman looked straight at her and said, wait, you're being followed by something. A woman. She didn't find you on her own. Someone helped her, gave her a way to cling to you. This wasn't random. Someone guided her and placed her in your path. This didn't happen by accident. Jen didn't know how to respond. Her vision blurred. Her legs moved without thinking. Something in her mind, something was telling her to leave. Her body actually turned toward the door, ready to walk out. Her friend grabbed her arm. The old woman got up slowly, stepped forward, and gave Jen a gentle slap across the face. It wasn't hard, but it was enough. Jen snapped back. It was as if she was in the same dreamlike state she was in last night, where her body was doing things on its own. Sit down, the woman said, calm, but firm. Close your eyes. Jen sat. She felt the old woman's warm hand rest on her shoulder. Now think back. Where have you been these past few days? Anywhere unfamiliar? Strange? A place where you normally wouldn't go? Jen tried. She combed through her memories, the nightmare, Linda's apartment, to walk home. Then it came to her. The day she went to see that Taoist priest, the one Linda's mom had brought her to. The old woman didn't say anything for a moment. Then she spoke. Is this the building? She asked. 2 elevators? Trash room on the right? Jen's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't said anything out loud. She nodded slowly. Okay, keep going, the old woman said. Step into the elevator, hit the button, go up. In her mind, Jen did exactly that. The memory became clearer, like she was reliving it in real time. She watched herself step out of the elevator, but then she hesitated. I can't remember if I turned left or right here, she said quietly. But the old woman somehow already knew. Is it the unit with the gunyam by the door? She asked, the one filled with old artifacts and other statues. Jen nodded again. By any chance, did you give anyone your sisambatsi in this apartment? Jen whispered, yes. The old woman continued. I see the paper, she said. Your name, your date, your time of birth. It's under the foot of a statue of Deji Gong. Jen froze. But there's something else. Another paper. Someone else's name. Their sisambatsi stacked right on top of yours. For those of you unfamiliar, Deji Gong sometimes translates as the Lord of Landlords, or Landlord Spirit. It's a local guardian figure in Chinese folk tradition. He's not considered a major deity in formal Taoism, but more like a protective spirit tied to a specific piece of land, a building or a home. Not to be confused with the more popular Tode Gong, which is the god of earth, who is a much higher ranking earth deity, responsible for the well-being of an area's land, crops, weather, and sometimes even local justice. People pray to him for protection and land-related matters. He oversees entire regions, villages, or even towns, not just a specific home or small property like Deji Gong. It's common to see the statue of Deji Gong near the entrance of older apartments, especially in Hong Kong. People light incense, leave small offerings, and pray to him for safety and stability. Jen wasn't sure what this meant. The old woman explained that this practice is related to Tai San. It literally translates to substitute body, or replacement. The priest that she saw at that apartment, for whatever reason, put her information underneath another person's information. In traditional Chinese folk beliefs, if someone else's sisambatsi is found to be aligned beneath or inside another person's sisambatsi, it usually means that the one that is on top or on the outside is the information of someone that's already dead. Since Jen's information was under another person's, it means she was now entangled with that of a restless or unjustly deceased spirit, where that spirit would be trying to drag Jen toward their fate. This goes much deeper than this, but I can elaborate more at the end. The old woman told all of this to Jen. Now that she has located the issue, she performed some sort of separation ritual. It took about an hour, but after a lot of chanting and burning of papers and paper dolls, she told Jen all will be fine now, and to never go back to that Taoist priest's apartment. Also, to stop giving out her sisambatsi willy-nilly like that. Jen never knew why that Taoist priest did this to her. She's never met him before that day. She couldn't help but think, did Linda's mom have something to do with this? Was it jealousy? Hate? Could she not accept the fact that Jen was doing so much better in life than her own daughter and themselves, that she wanted to interfere and try to take it all away? After this incident, Jen never slept over or even went over to Linda's apartment again. She did still meet up with Linda occasionally, outside their home. There wasn't any way for Jen to prove anything, but just to be safe, she kept her distance from Linda's family. So, what do you guys think happened? Was it just bad luck? A run-in with the wrong Taoist priest at the wrong time? Maybe he just didn't like how much she tipped him after that ritual. Maybe he saw something in her that he just didn't like. Or was it something deeper? Could Linda's mom have been involved? After all, she struggled her whole life, barely getting by, watching her own daughter grow up with the same kind of limitations. And then here comes Jen, same age, same background, but living a completely different life. A luxury flat, a career as an ophthalmologist, everything that might have felt out of reach for someone like Linda or her mom. And what about the spirit that Jen saw at Linda's apartment, the one with her face? If this was the priestess doing alone, how did he know she would come see him in the first place? Did Linda's mom already meet with the priest beforehand to do something? If you ever find yourself in a place where these things are taken seriously, just be careful who you trust, and never, ever share your sesambatsi. That's the combination of your date of birth and time of birth with someone you don't fully trust. In the wrong hands, it's said to give others power over your fate. But then of course, I think most of us here wouldn't even know where to find this information. I mean, if you asked me what time I was born, I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you, but maybe that's not such a bad thing. Alright, I wanted to dive a little deeper into the cultural belief of substitution, or taisun. Have you ever heard of this before? In Chinese spiritual beliefs, taisun literally translates to substitute body, or body double. It's the idea that a person can have a spiritual proxy take their place, either by diverting misfortune, absorbing a curse, or to be sacrificed in their place. There are a handful of different forms of taisun. Let's just cover a few. The first is protective taisun. This is a misfortune replacement. In some Taoist or folk practices, people would create a taisun using small paper effigies, straw dolls, or even clothing. It's believed that the substitute can trick or mislead malevolent spirits, absorbing the bad luck, illness, or even death that was meant for the actual person. After the ritual, the taisun is typically burned or discarded, symbolically removing the misfortune. The second type is malicious taisun, or spiritual manipulation. This is a much darker version, and it's the one relevant to the story we just shared together. Some believe that if you have access to someone's sesambatsi, and you're spiritually skilled, or working with a practitioner, you can create a taisun to target them. In the wrong hands, it can be used to transfer karmic debt to someone else, draw a spirit to attach to them, or even set them up as a sacrificial stand-in for rituals involving curses, summonings, or spiritual bindings. In our story, Jen gave her sesambatsi to the strange Taoist priest, and later finds out that another sesambatsi was written down and placed on top of hers. The female spirit might not have been targeting Jen at first, but was now bound to her through this ritual. If Linda's mom was involved or colluded with the priest, it could have been a form of spiritual transference. Perhaps offloading a haunting or a curse from Linda's life onto Jen's, making Jen the bearer of misfortune that wasn't meant for her. This is one possibility. The other possibility is that the Taoist priest did this not to transfer any existing curses or hauntings, but to create one, attacking Jen by sending that female spirit. That female spirit could have been something called a taanguay, a replacement ghost. You may be thinking, if this female spirit was a person who's passed, then what are they trying to replace? What's the point of this? So this goes pretty deep, but the simple answer is that these types of spirits usually died unjustly, meaning that they may have ended their own life, a sudden accident, or maybe their life was ended by another person. The spirit is most likely trapped in the mortal world, lost, wandering in limbo, also vengeful and desperate to escape the suffering. These are spirits that can't reincarnate, find peace, or move on to the next phase of existence. So, in order for these types of ghosts to escape its cursed state is by making someone else die in their place, like a spiritual substitution. This is based on the idea of karma balancing. So, how it's believed to work is that the spirit would trick or drag this person to their death, often in the same way that they died. This new death closes the loop in a way, allowing for the original ghost to finally leave, and this living person that just passed becomes the new restless spirit in their place, and the first ghost reincarnates or moves on. In traditional Chinese belief, water is very yin. In Cantonese, we say yum. It's spiritually heavy, cold, and associated with the dead. Spirits are thought to gather near water, especially at night. This is why rivers, lakes, canals, and bridges are common places where accidents and ghost sightings occur. This is why you often hear old people warn, never walk alone at night near water. If a ghost needs a taisun, you might be the one it chooses. People who are being targeted as a taisun by one of these spirits may experience sudden dark thoughts of anyone's own life, with no previous mental health issues, recurring dreams of drowning, falling, or death, seeing a version of themselves either in dreams or in real life. Also, strong urges to visit or return to a particular place. This is usually a place that's linked to the ghost's original death. The ghost isn't trying to kill for revenge, it's trying to escape its never-ending loop. But escape comes at a cost, and someone else has to pay for it. Do you know what I mean when I say never-ending loop? These spirits that are trapped in the mortal world are not just aimlessly floating around. They are often believed to be reliving the moment or the state of their death over and over again. If the spirit died in fear, pain, betrayal, or despair, they may be locked into the emotions and sensations of that moment, especially if the spirit ended their own life, drowned, or if it was a violent death. It's believed that the soul can become spiritually stuck, repeating these moments endlessly. This leads to suffering, confusion, and a loss of identity. Sometimes, they might not even remember who they were. This is sometimes described as a kind of ghost loop, where time doesn't pass and the spirit becomes emotionally frozen. These spirits sometimes find a taisun through a few methods. 1. They mistake a living person for itself, especially if they share a similar energy, looks, or fate. 2. They were guided by someone like a priest or jealous person to attach to a new vessel. Or 3. They actively try to trade places with someone living, trying to break the loop. By forcing the living person to die in the same way, this ghost recreates the original moment of death, but with a different soul. This topic is another one that goes pretty deep, so we'll just stick with the basics in this episode. I hope you found this episode as fascinating as I have. Looking forward to us to meet again next week.